Good afternoon and welcome to our latest webinar, Surpass for Finance and Accountancy Examinations. Okay, before we get started, just a quick up-and-coming list of events. Firstly, there's Pop Topics, a year in review. Pop Topics, if you weren't aware, is a virtual conference where renowned individuals in the credentialing and assessment industry discuss their marketing strategies and how they have approached running their programs during the pandemic. And that's managed by our friend Manny over in the US. Next, we have C&G, or the Certification Network Group, and their latest of the quarterly events they run. This one titled Building Championship Caliber Board Teams. After that, we have another Pop Topics conference at the end of July. And then finally, in early February, we have another Surpass community webinar, and that's Secure Assessments with live proctoring, featuring our latest new partners, Accountancy. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So today's session is mostly about the different approaches and technology used for assessing financial exams. So we're going to cover a few different things. We've got Loft, linear on-the-fly testing. We've got how to manage large single-day testing events, both in a lockdown and not in a lockdown. And then finally, we have a demonstration of some of the new and exciting advanced question types that are now available in Surpass. So I'm very pleased to say that I am joined today, hopefully, there we go, by Ioana Hrilianu, who is the Senior Assessment and Quality Specialist at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Scotland, ICAS. How did I do in the pronunciation?
Great.
Yeah, good. Also, Robbie Burns, Assessment and Quality Lead, also at ICAS. Hi, Robbie.
Hi.
And Andy Thomas, Director of PEP Examinations at CPA Canada. Now, unfortunately, you may have been expecting Janine Claessens also from the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, but unfortunately, two members of Janine's team have tested positive for COVID, and that's made what's already quite a busy period for them even busier. And so we send her apologies, and we wish her colleagues a safe and swift recovery. So let's get started. Okay, first question is to you, Andy. If we could just set the scene, tell us a little bit about how CPA Canada deliver exams in terms of the locations, how many candidates you deliver to, how many sessions you have throughout the year.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about how we delivered exams up until March, and then we'll go into what we do now. But so we have two different programs we run. We have the preparatory program, which is kind of a university-based program. There are 14 different modules, so we run 14 different exam end of module exams 5 times a year there. We run what we call the professional education program, which is our graduate level program for accountancy. And then we have what we call the common final examination, which is a final 3-day comprehensive examination that is the final step before you become a CPA in Canada. So traditionally, we've run examinations in exam halls. You know, at the extreme, we have 10,000 students across the country writing an exam at any one time, and that's for our final examination. And in terms of an exam hall, our biggest exam hall is about 1,200 students. So in Toronto area, we rent out a convention center, and we have typically had 1,200 students writing an exam at the same time in the same venue. Obviously, that's not going to happen in the current environment. So if you want to hear about that, I'm happy to chat about that.
Well, I do, but I will come on to that. So before we started this webinar, we had a pre-chat, and Andy revealed how CPA Canada had managed to continue delivering large single-day sessions during the lockdown or the pandemic, and it's very, very interesting, but we'll move on to that in a second. Firstly, a couple of questions on that general setup, pre-COVID, pre-lockdown. How do you even go about verifying or authenticating, 1,000, was it 200, 1,300 candidates at a single venue, all arriving in the same place? Can you talk a little bit about that, the logistical management of it?
About physically how they arrive. Well, quite frankly, the students are asked to arrive an hour before the exam, so it takes us quite a while to get them through the process to verify, their IDs, get them to their seats, and when I'm talking 1,200, we also have venues that have 5 people. So it's quite a variation. As you know, Canada is a very large country geographically, so it varies considerably across the country. But in that one very large exam hall in Toronto, yeah, the students are asked to come early. There are a number of people there to verify their identifications, get them seated, make sure they're ready to go. They're asked to do a pre-check on their computer, so all the computers are there, and they're asked to do a pre-check. And if there's any issues, they deal with them as much as they can before that, within that hour of pre-setup, I guess.
Right. Okay. So it's not just 1,200 or so candidates, it's 1,200 devices. It's making sure you've got internet for that. It's making sure you've got all the staff on site to manage and make sure everyone goes through that process.
Yeah.
Out of all of that complexity, what would you say the biggest challenges are for you typically on any given exam day?
On any given exam day, well, it's usually, occasionally it can be the internet. So if the internet's not functioning, for example, in a location, our backup, call it a disaster plan, whatever you want to call it, kicks in, which we do have a disaster plan for that, which basically means we need to bring out devices that are capable of accessing the internet in a different way, but that obviously leads us to slowdowns and to some frustration sometimes on the behalf of students. So that's probably our biggest worry, I would think. So once we get the students up and running and in the exam, it's usually not an issue at all.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. So to get a different perspective, Robbie and Ioana, you guys obviously don't have to cater for such large numbers of candidates in a single venue. You certainly have a large number of candidates. Could you talk a little bit about how you've approached it differently? You have different challenges. So my understanding is you guys use a loft or a linear on the fly testing. It looks like we've just lost Robbie, so Ioana, you will be volunteering yourself to answer this question. So how do you go about? What's your typical approach to assessing candidates?
I can split it up a bit into we've got Robbie back as well.
Sorry, that was the perfect time for my Wi-Fi just to collapse, so I apologise. Almost perfect timing. Our number is a little bit different from Andy's. We don't have the single mass events. We run exams for about 3,500 to 4,000 candidates each year. Every candidate has to sit 13 individual exams with us as they go through their process, and about 25 different mocks. So we deal with our rollout on a much more immediate scale. We've got many more frequent events and for smaller numbers of candidates. So we've opted much more for we've got very regular exams running at very regular intervals, and we manage them that way. And indeed, we'll come on and talk a little bit more about how we do that at our entry level a little bit later on.
Well, yeah, I mean, that maybe now, if that's okay, I was quite interested in exploring, because I think to make sure that you're not, candidates who are taking an exam this week are able to speak to candidates who took the exam last week and benefit in any way. You've got a dynamic test form, or what we would call linear on the fly testing, where you're randomizing the content or the test forms that are delivered to each individual candidate. Are you able to talk a little bit about that? How many items you have, or maybe if you can't go into that detail, how often you're having to refresh your items?
Absolutely. Our entry level, and we do only do this for our first level of exams. We offer on-demand testing effectively. So in the course of a year, and Ioana will testify, this is why I've got so many grey hairs. We probably run exams about 45 or 46 weeks of the year for our entry-level exams. And obviously, when we are running exams with that kind of frequency, it's imperative that we do our best to maintain the integrity of the exam database. So we do indeed run exams with randomization. We have a single question bank, which is randomized for use during the course of the exams. What will happen is we work very closely with our academic partners, and we build a question bank, which is, like all question banks, is split into learning outcomes, to syllabus learning outcomes, and we populate all those questions into a question bank. We then are able to draw randomized testing from each of those for each of those subjects, based on an algorithm that is pre-populated and pre-agreed with our academics, to ensure that candidates don't all get the same questions, they don't all get them in the same order, and even if we have 40, 50, 60, 300 candidates all sitting the exam on the same day from the same bank, they will all get different questions and will be presented in a different order.
Right. That's great. So you've got a kind of a test blueprint that says you need X amount of items from this learning outcome, Y amount of items from that learning outcome. And then at the point at which it's delivered to a candidate, it's pulling the items out of Surpass. So you're getting the right curriculum balance, and you're ensuring it's kind of got the right difficulty equivalence across all the different test forms.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, that obviously varies from year to year as subject matter changes and syllabus changes. So we do go through a cycle, and I think I say we run exams kind of 45, 46 weeks of the year. What we then have is that 4 or 5 week downtime between one period ending and the other one beginning, where we review our content and we make sure that it's all up to date and accurate for launching the following syllabus year. Okay,
so I'm quite interested to get Andy's perspective on this, because I feel like there's huge complexity and logistical challenges in managing these single-day testing events. Have CPA Canada ever considered moving to more of a continuous testing, or is there reasons why that just won't work for you guys? Oh, sorry, Andy, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, of course, Iowa dollar. No, it's absolutely within our blueprint, shall I say, moving forward to get to. So I'm very interested in to hear what Robbie has to say, so our lower level exams are quite a bit of MCQ type questions, and we think moving those to an on-demand style is definitely something we're looking into and would help our students considerably in terms of convenience. So, yeah, we're definitely looking to move in that direction.
That's interesting. So, if you're creating multiple different versions of an item that are meant to be of equivalent, learning outcome and difficulty, how do you go about it? Just out of interest, Robbie, are you writing new questions from scratch? Are you taking the a question as kind of a master version and then tweaking the numbers or some of the variables within that question to make a variant of it?
There's a little bit of both, to be fair. We've actually undertaken a fairly extensive syllabus change for our most recent exam for the current year for our entry-level exams, and that has demanded a significant level of new questions, which is always very popular with the academics among us when we have to go and write a whole batch of new questions. So where there's not such dramatic change, but obviously tax rates will change, and there'll be various things around the edges where you can update the questions that exist in the bank. And every year there's obviously a big enough exercise to sit and review all the questions that have got those variables in them and to update them. We do use the tagging function within Surpass to allow us to identify those particular questions as we go. So every year we can use that tagging function, and we can pick up which questions are going to have to be adjusted or amended, and say that's done in that gap every year where we don't have any exams running. But we also have a program every year of removing questions from the database question bank, whether that's because that they're no longer valid, that they're out of date, or they've not been performed. We carry out quite an extensive analysis of all our questions at the end of every year, and we go back and we replace them and write new questions where they're required.
Okay, that's very interesting. So I was talking to Andy just before the webinar started, and I was going to ask, have you guys ever considered automatic item generation in the future? And Andy said, oh, we already do it. So Andy, could you, because when it comes to creating lots of variants of an item, obviously it is the dream that it can just be done automatically. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys are already doing automatic item generation?
Sure. So we started probably a year and a half, 2 years ago with automatic item generation, and we had a so we started the MCQ items. I should clarify that immediately. We were thinking about doing some different item types, but right now it's strictly related to MCQs. So what we do is we use a very simple tool, mail merge, which is just a word, a resource. And we create, so we started with very successful MCQ items, which we call parent items. And we use those successful parent items, which we can tell they're successful by the statistics in the back end. And we asked our authors, we brought all our authors together, and we asked them to create new items based on the successful parent item. And when people talk about automatic item generation, they talk about generating thousands of items from one item. That for us is useless. So what we've been doing is we've been creating 10, maybe 15 items from a good parent item. And so we call those siblings, but that's another story. And so we take our parent item, we ask our authors to change various factors within it. Some aesthetic and some are critical to the analysis. And they create those basically within an Excel file, and then they automatically get uploaded essentially into our Word document, which generates 10 or 15 items. So just to give you an idea of how successful we've been on that, we held a workshop about, well, it was a workshop that was face-to-face, so over about a year ago now, where we got 12 authors together, and over the course of a weekend, we created 1,200 different MCQ items using the AIG technologies that we had available. So the first thing we did was we taught all the authors how to do this, and then we asked them to go away and do them. And much to our delight, we had no authors that were not able to do it. We thought we might have some authors that just couldn't do this, but it was no problem whatsoever. So sure, the automatic item generation is part of it, but more important is the authors and how they are generating the items in the background. So it's really a mix of technology and humans that led to success in our end.
Well, I'm pretty sure, if we're not already, because I know our teams have talked a bit about AIG and how we can get that working for you guys in Surpass. So I think we should be having more discussions on what you're currently doing and making sure we understand that if we're not already. So I would like to just change tack a little bit here. If we could move away from the more logistical side of testing and start looking at some of the content. So Iwana, I think if it's okay with you, we're going to show some ICAST content to begin with, and if you could perhaps help guide us through your choice of question types and why you've opted for those. So James, if we could please run the first video. So there is a couple. I'll start off if that's okay, Iwana. So you've passed me this mock exam which you guys have. I've started off by demonstrating for the audience some of the functionality in Surpass so they can just see how it works from the candidate's perspective. So what's happening right now is the candidate's striking through the options that they want to discount, and they're selecting the option that they want to mark as correct. What I'm now showing is just the ability to select from color preferences. So if you've got candidates who are suffering from mild visual impairments, perhaps dyslexia or color blindness, they're able to select the appropriate color theme for them. Now, what we've got on the list here, you've got 25 questions in this exam. Iwana, is that representative of a normal live exam for you guys?
We run exams with both 25 questions and 40 questions in our entry level of exams. This particular exam uses a combination of MCQs and what we call long form question. If, for example, if you go to, we will see question 25 here. This particular type of question allows us to test a part of our syllabus that would be quite difficult to test through just an MCQ question. That's one of the reasons why we decided to use this type of question. It's got a template built into the question. And on the back end, we've got a solution attached to the question. The students answer the question in an exam, and then the system automatically calculates it and scores it. So that's also obviously very helpful.
That's great. So that's that table which we just saw, which is representing, excuse my ignorance, some kind of financial form that needs to be completed, is completely auto-marked based on the numbers. Is it cumulative marking? So there's a correct mark for each cell. Is that how it works, or is there sort of combination marking?
It's cumulative marking.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's very interesting. I can see why you're able to achieve quite a lot of variability in your questions there with the sort of structure you have. Could we now move on to Andy? This isn't your content, by the way. Kindly, ICAW allowed us to show an example of their mock exam, but this is using functionality that I think you're very familiar with. It's the Excel spreadsheet simulator and the Microsoft Word simulator that's built into Surpass. And that's also used by the South African Institute. So if we could now run that video, we're going to take a look at some of the content here. So the first, the ICAS, your version was based around completely objective marked content, so using a combination of multiple choice questions with tables and then a table entry. Now what we're going to see on this is quite different. This requires human marking, and it's because we're going to give the candidate access to I say simulators, but to be honest, you'll struggle to tell them apart from the real Microsoft Office applications they're simulating. But what we're starting off with here is a demonstration of how you can attach a PDF. So you can have, if you've got a set of tasks, you can have those adjacent to the answer area. And you can see here, I really don't know if this is an accurate representation of what's needed, but this is a PDF document, but it's 1,704 pages long. Is that something you need at CPA Canada at all?
Well, it's not this one, but we have our own version, yes.
Oh, right, okay, so it's not too unrealistic.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at here is the ability for the candidate to flick between the different question instructions and a reference document there, which is Auditing Standards 2018. Now, what we should see shortly is the candidate accessing the spreadsheet editor or the Microsoft Word processor simulator. So what this does, and this is in a completely locked down environment, it's bringing up the Excel simulator to begin with. And as you can see, it should look pretty familiar to any candidate who's used Excel, and you can have that locked to the side of the screen there. And I think what we're going to see here is just a very brief demonstration of some of the formulas and the kind of usability that you would expect to be available in Microsoft Excel, and so have available in a simulated environment. So what we're seeing here is this ability to auto extend any patterns. So gone 789, we're auto selecting that and it'll drag down. Obviously very standard functionality that's available in Excel, but something the candidates would expect. And now we're seeing use of some of the common formula that candidates would expect to have access to. So Andy, I'm going to just ask you a couple of questions here. I just want to take a couple of moments there to explain what our viewers were watching there. How similar is this to your assessments?
Yeah, it's fairly similar. The typical way our students would use the Word and Excel lookalike tools, if you like, is they would use them to answer the questions. And so particularly, so the Word part is relatively straightforward, and that's rarely an issue. The Excel part is a little bit more complicated. And we actually, so students are allowed to answer on the Excel spreadsheets, and that's what they submit. But in addition to that, we also allow them, we give them tabs with information preloaded. So we would give them financial statements that are preloaded on one of these tabs, for example, that they can use to copy and paste over to their answer tab. So they're allowed to answer in one tab, and they may have other multiple tabs with preloaded information. And the reason why we do that is we don't want them copying stuff or rewriting it within the Excel tab itself. So if they can copy and paste, it just helps them with their efficiency when they're writing the exam.
Right, that's very interesting. And I think one of the reasons we went down the simulator route, by the way, because I think we've experimented with all sorts of different approaches here, but one of the main reasons is if there's a simulator that's built into the test driver, as it is here, we're able to turn off some of that functionality which may be seen as a security issue. Things like being able to hyperlink outside of the applications, and a myriad of other things like being able to access the candidate's desktop or whatever. By using these simulated environments, I think we're able to control the ribbons and the functionality that's available to candidates. So I understand that's been quite a successful approach for you guys at CPA Canada.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, Jim. Is the more we can control the students' environment so that they can't go anywhere else, the better the integrity of the exam. So that's really important to us as well.
Okay, great. So I got a general question for all of you, because we deal with at BTL, we deal with quite a lot of different subject areas, from healthcare assessments to vocational to general qualifications. I have to say, finance does seem to be one of the areas that embraces this kind of real-world performance-based assessment, or using questions or question types that closer reflect what the professional accountants may be using once they're qualified. Why do you think that is? I'll start with Robbie, if that's okay. Why do you think that financial sector just embraces these more innovative question types or approaches to assessment?
I think from our perspective, we do work very closely with the firms who provide our students, our candidates to us. And there has been, for the past maybe 5 or 6 years, a desire by those firms to move away from the kind of traditional sit down with a pen and paper and write some text approach. And they've been very keen to try to embrace exam questions and exam situations that more accurately reflect really how a candidate, how a student would work in the real world today. So we've actually been very, very fortunate that when we've been keen to make those kind of changes, we have had the support, very much have the support of our clients, because we're aware that the role of the accountant in our case is changing weekly, monthly, daily, actually, and the more we can do to assess within that kind of space, the better understanding that they have of how well equipped a candidate is going to be in that environment. So we've been very fortunate on that front.
That's interesting. So you've got encouragement from the organisations, the organisations that the candidates will end up working for, to assess them in the best way possible that proves their competency in the respective field. And Andy, do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think I'd just add that some of it might have to do with the subject matter itself. I just think in finance, we're always working on a computer with, we're dealing with spreadsheets, we're dealing with the reports, et cetera, et cetera. And so to test that kind of real life situation within an exam situation is probably relatively straightforward compared to something like healthcare, which is obviously much, much different and has to deal with human interaction
Sure.
on a larger basis. So.
Yes, that's a very good point. Okay, listen, I did have a plan here that roughly at this stage of the webinar, we were going to look at some future content in Surpass. But before we do that, because prior to the webinar, we had a discussion about how CPA Canada were managing their single day testing sessions during a pandemic or a national lockdown. And I was pretty surprised by the story. Can I please give the floor to you, Andy, to explain how you managed to continue doing single day testing events at volume during the pandemic?
Sure. So I'll preface it by saying that we run all kinds of exams, lower risk to our ultimate, to our final accreditation exam. So what I'm going to talk about is just our final accreditation exam, which we write once or twice a year, and is a high volume exam. So about 10,000 students back in September of this year during COVID wrote this exam across the country. We made the determination several months prior to that we were not comfortable going to a remote proctoring environment. One, because we don't use remote proctoring, and so it would be a big risk for us to go on this exam, to go there right away. And we were not satisfied about the different logistical things like internet connections, integrity, and whatnot. Having said that, So the what we decided was that we would, instead of using exam halls across the country to deliver the exam to 10,000 students, we would rent individual hotel rooms for all 10,000 students across the country. And so that's essentially what we did. And so back in September, we rented, as I said, 10,000 hotel rooms, roughly 200 hotels across the country in various exam locations. And really, the students loved it. So it went off without a hitch. The students each got their hotel room. They wrote in their own exams. We rented them all computers. We set them up for them. So we controlled the whole situation. And that was really important to us. And so from a student standpoint, they loved it. It's a 3-day exam. So the students would write a day, go home, write it, and come back the next day and write in the very same hotel room, go home, and then come back for day 3. And so that from the student's point of view worked really well. At the back end, administratively, it was a heck of a lot of work. So logistically, setting up 10,000 hotel rooms, and we also used live proctors within the hotel. So we had 2,000 proctors as well, which walked up and down the hallways. So the students would have to leave their door open to their hotel room as they wrote the exam, and the live proctors would walk up and down the hallway to make sure everything was cool. So went really well. We're considering running it again for our next set of exams, which is in May of this year. But that's what we ended up doing for the large scale in-person exam.
That's a fantastic story. That's really interesting. And so you've got these proctors or invigilators who are walking up and down the hallways. All the doors are open to the rooms where the candidates are taking their tests. You've controlled the environment already, so there's no way that there could be anything like in a remote proctor scenario. There's always a nervousness that there might be something in the room that's going to help the candidate. But you've taken care of that. You've controlled the room, and you've probably. I'm sure Canadian hotels are extremely happy with CPA Canada, given that they're probably short of business at this current point.
Yeah, that certainly worked to our advantage. We were able to get hotel rooms at a relatively reasonable rate, given COVID, and they were sitting there empty. So.
Great. Okay. Well, that's fascinating. I don't suppose ICAS have thought about putting up all your students in a hotel.
We haven't, and I doubt we could afford it, but it's a fantastic way to deliver it. It's brilliant.
It gets you everything, doesn't it? It gets you the secure environment. It gets you the social distancing. I think it's a very innovative solution. Great. Okay. So I think what we're going to do now is we've got the new task-based simulation question type, which we've been really desperate to show off for a while now. So this is the perfect opportunity whilst we have experts from the financial accounting sector. So could I please ask James, just to set this up, my colleague Adam, who's a product specialist, has done a kind of a 5-minute demo, so we can all take a breather here while we watch Adam talk through what is a very complex question type. And so he's had a task. I set him the task of, you've got 5 minutes to explain the full capabilities of this question type, and I think he's done a fantastic job. So we'll now just sit back and watch that video.
Here is an example of the finished product, a task-based simulation that has been used in Surpass by community members CPA Canada. I will now take you through the simple steps required to achieve this goal. Even an advanced item type like this, with its countless potential permutations, is, as you will see, straightforward to create in Surpass. Like any other item type, you can create a TBS from within item authoring. Our dedicated UX/UI design team have done a stunning job with the interface, making it clear, intuitive and straightforward. The form-based process is logical, leading you from one step to the next. The first step is to enter question text in the box provided. The bulk of the content creation occurs within the Edit Content dialog, found in Step 2. The crucial areas of content creation we will be focusing on today are item content and rubric. Simply navigate between the two by selecting the tabs at the top of the dialog. We will return to cover rubrics shortly. Item content is added in elements known as widgets. There are 2 main types of widget, a rich text editor and a formattable grid. These elements are added to an item by dragging and dropping them onto the screen. The drag and drop functionality behaves intuitively, as well as giving you the freedom to alter the appearance of the item as you see fit. Formatting functionality consciously mimics standardized formats for familiarity, allowing your users to focus on what matters. Grid elements also replicate standard table editing formats, so SMEs can jump straight in and begin creating content. Each cell in the grid can be designated as stimulus or candidate response. Those requiring candidates' input can be numeric entry, to allow candidates to enter a numeric value, percentage, or currency, or an options list, to enable candidates to select an answer from a set of predefined values. As an item creator, you can choose to enter numbers, formulas that replicate standard spreadsheet functionality, or text into a cell. These values will be static and are used to inform the candidate's responses. The range of available options when creating a TBS is exemplary of the countless permutations this advanced item type can have. It is this variety that allows your organisation to assess competencies in more and more realistic and comprehensive manners. We have seen how the task-based simulation enables you to create assessments of almost limitless variety. The same can be said of the ways in which candidates earn marks. This is in spite of the TBS being entirely auto-marked, saving you time and money, as well as a whole host of security concerns. Candidates using the TBS are assessed by measurement opportunities, or MOs. MOs outline the criteria candidates need to achieve a mark in the form of assertions and keys. Each individual assertion is a correct response from within the grid we saw earlier, and each key acts as a group of these assertions. Assertions can be combined within a key to form an AND relationship, while keys form OR relationships between one another. This means candidates must obtain all of the assertions in one of the keys to gain a mark from the MO. Creating multiple keys therefore provides alternative ways in which the MO can be achieved and consequently the marks obtained. Clearly then, MOs can be set up to contain one or many assertions under one or many keys, adding to the possible permutations of your task-based simulation. To choose how many marks a candidate will earn by meeting the criteria of an MO, navigate to the item creation screen. Each MO can be tagged with its own metadata values for reference and for analysis. Now we have seen how to create a TBS, let's see how the task-based simulation is presented to candidates in exam delivery. Again, the interface is an intuitive one, adhering to contemporary UX principles with which candidates are familiar. Attention is immediately drawn to the grid cells that require a response, and responses are entered in a logical and straightforward fashion. As such, your candidates can focus solely on the assessment and not be distracted by the technology.
Right, that was excellent. Thank you very much, Adam, for doing that. I think if I was to try and summarize that, which is an extremely difficult task, I would say it's basically a big table that you present to candidates, and there's about 1 million different ways in which the candidate can arrive at the correct answer, but it can all be auto-marked, which is, I think, the great thing. So you can have all these endless permutations of the candidate might choose to put something in one row, and that because they've done that, the knock-on effect of the cells that are in the same row is that they have different, or they have responses that are related to whatever they put in the first cell. That was a really poor summary, but Andy, could I start with you? Because I think you've got some, you've already got ideas of how you're going to use this question type and where you see its purpose being within CPA Canada's exams. Could you expand on that?
Sure, and the I wasn't aware you're going to use that one as the demo. That's a finance, that's a net present value question that we created here at CPA Canada as one of our sample questions, and it's very interesting because finance is my area of expertise. So I think it's really interesting how that one came together. So in task-based simulations, which is what we call them, we didn't create task-based simulations. The AICPA in the States has been using these things for years. So we're kind of, we've been talking to them, and we've used their base task-based simulations, and we've kind of interpreted it for our different scenarios. But we use task-based or our plan is to use task-based simulations up and down our exams. So right from our lowest level exam, our entry level exams, to replace some MCQ items, and we'll also use them to replace some cases on our higher level exams. And for me, I see five different advantages to using task-based simulations. The first one is marking consistency. So compared to cases which we need to bring humans in to mark, or constructive response items, at this point we need to bring humans in to mark. The consistency of marking is obviously, since the computer is doing everything, is much improved. Second thing is the real life simulations. So we believe task-based simulations are quite good at simulating real life, certainly compared to MCQs. They can create a scenario, and then we can ask different questions based on that scenario. And it really, when you get down to it, the look and the feel is quite real life. Third, we think we can get to higher order skills with our task-based simulations. So especially compared to MCQs, which typically are certainly test some application and some analysis in the better MCQs, but are a lot of remembering as well skills. So if you think of Bloom's taxonomy, we think task-based simulations get to those higher level skills, application analysis, and even evaluation to some degree certainly better than MCQs, and perhaps they might sit in between MCQs and cases. And we use all those different item types. The costs, certainly the costs to create these TBSs, these task-based simulations, are higher than they would be for MCQs or for cases. But the behind the scenes, we don't need to pay humans to mark them. So we think in the end, it's actually going to cost us less to deliver these task-based simulations than it would to deliver other item types. And the last thing I'll say, and this is comes from because I love data, is from task-based simulations and the measurement opportunities, you're really getting statistics that look a lot like MCQs. Okay, so you're getting that binary type of analysis, and you can get your biserials, you can get your difficulties, all those different statistics are much more possible with task-based simulations, and those are difficult for us to get with our case-based questions. So that's kind of the 5 advantages I see to task-based simulations.
That's really interesting. Thank you. I mean, I'd certainly heard of some of those, but I hadn't considered that you had, which is obviously a much bigger thing, I think, particularly in North America, is being able to psychometrically validate that an item is behaving exactly how you want it to. And that's very easy to do on multiple choice. It's one of the reasons MCQs are such a popular format. But I didn't realize that linking the measurement opportunities to the individual tag gave you very similar, or gave you certainly a higher degree of sort of analysis.
Yeah, for sure it does, and I think that's one of the beauties behind the scenes. So we'll be able to tell what are good measurement opportunities and what are bad measurement opportunities, and adjust the task-based simulations as we move forward.
Right. Okay. So Andy, you described kind of, you've got Bloom's taxonomy and you've got case questions at the higher end, and you've perhaps got multiple choice doing the lower level stuff, and perhaps this can do some of the case stuff, but it perhaps sits somewhere in between on the taxonomy and caters for that scenario. So Iwana, how do you have any thoughts on it? What did you think of the task-based simulator? Do you think there's any potential for ICAS to use this? Oh no! It looks. I thought Iwana was just very still. It looks like she's perhaps frozen.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Is there anything else you want to talk about with regards to the task-based simulator at this point? Because otherwise, I know that we are getting quite a few questions in. I'd be happy to refer to the uncharted waters of audience questions.
Yeah. No, I'm just happy to field any questions for sure. So we can go there.
Okay. So let's have a look. So we had some questions that came up prior to the event. We had some people, when they joined up, submit questions. So we'll go to there first. I know we've had a couple that have as well. So This is an interesting one. It's a we're going to start with a very challenging one, Andy. So I hope you're prepared. How do we use technology to move beyond the limitations of objective testing to simulate tasks undertaken in the workplace to demonstrate that passing candidates are business ready? Well, I think to some degree the TBS is a step in that direction. But Andy, do you have any additional thoughts on that? You can see the question on screen, hopefully.
Well, I think they may have answered their own question. I do think technology, certainly moving forward, will allow us to test more in real life situations. So if you think about it, if you think of the auditing firms out there and the technologies that they're employing within the workplace to allow their students to complete their jobs more efficiently and more effectively, I think if we can bring some of that technology back into the education and examination world, then I do think we'll be able to simulate the workplace, even better in the future. And I see that happening, especially with all the web-based applications that are happening out there right now. So,
absolutely, yeah. I think we've built lots. Going back in BTL's history, 10, 15 years, we've always specialized to a degree in building kind of what we used to call advanced question types, which are more commonly referred to as simulations, and everything that goes from assessing more advanced physics or math skills through to accountancy based simulations. And one of the things which we've decided to do recently, so that we can make this a more sustainable practice going forward, is we've built a custom question type framework, which basically, so you'll know Surpass, Andy, you've got all your standard questions you can select from, you can select your multiple choice or your case questions, essay, etc. There's now going to be a kind of a black box, an advanced question type framework where any company, whether it's BTL or a third-party development company or a certification board like yourselves, can build a simulation that just plugs directly into the authoring environment. And that means it can be maintained and developed externally of BTL, and so it can be enhanced as technology changes, as the certification board require more functionality or changes to be made. And it's something that can be very kind of agile and constantly evolving. So we're really excited about that. That's going to be available early next year, and hopefully we're already seeing quite a lot of interest from organizations wanting to build simulation-based question types on top of that. So we'll move on to another question type here. Another question. What lessons have you learned from these projects that can be applied more widely to enable online exam success across different exam sectors? That's a very broad question, but I suppose, Iwana, did you catch that question? Can you see it on your screen now? Okay, I think you're on mute, but if you want to talk about, so I suppose the project from your perspective is you've been using Loft, and if you want to talk about your remote proctoring, I know you delivered 1,300 remote proctored exams with Surpass last week on a single day. Perhaps you want to talk about what you've learned from that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year everyone's just had to find new ways to do what we used to do or what we used to take for granted, basically. So what we found since we've started using remote proctoring is that our students are quite quick at adapting as long as they're given the right information, and also as long as their own organizations that they work for are willing to work with us to make sure that we can deliver the exams for their students. But basically, I think the number one takeaway has been that we live in a world where we've got to adapt at the moment, and we are quite lucky that we've got the technology now to be able to deliver exams in these circumstances. And as far as the exam last week went, it was, I have to say, I was quite nervous, just because I always get like that before exams. I often say that I'm more nervous than our candidates. I don't think that's true, but that's something that I always believe is true. But it went quite well. We've had a couple of students that have said that they actually prefer sitting exams remotely, because some of the anxiety that they feel kind of goes away, because, you know, if you live in a big city, you have to factor in travel, and what if something happens to, you know, to your car in the morning or public transport, etc. So overall, the feedback that we've received has been positive.
Okay, so do you think post pandemic or post lockdown, you guys are going to continue with the remote proctoring, or maybe a hybrid model?
I think
it's definitely something that we would look to consider now going forward. I think we've learned a lot from it. I think once the pandemic is over, we've all got to take a step back and have a look at where we are and what we've done. But I do think, yeah, it might change for a lot of us in the industry how we do things going forward.
Right. Okay. And I'm assuming, Andy, that you're not going to continue with the hotel-based assessment once.
No, but if I might, just on the on-demand exams that we're looking at, we don't do them right now, but for us, it's not just about the technology. There's other pieces that need to be put in place for the on-demand exams, and so we talk about 5 different what we call building blocks for on-demand exams. The first one is exam structure. So we need to look at our exam structure and maybe introduce new item types like task-based simulations, for example, which lend themselves to on-demand exams. But the second thing is item banks. We need to increase the size of our item banks, and that's why we've gone to AIG. We need to look at Loft or some type of technology that will create the exams themselves. And we need to look at how and remote proctoring, I should say that you need remote proctoring or some tool that will help you deliver on-demand exams in a very convenient format. And finally, you need to figure out how all your systems are going to fit together. So from registration through exam delivery through remote proctoring, and how they all fit together. And so we're looking at all 5 of those areas before we get to where we think we can be on-demand exams.
Right. Well, I would definitely encourage you. Sorry, Robbie, do you want to?
I was going to say, I think I would completely echo that. I think a lot of what we've done in the past 6 or 7 months has been forced upon us. And once we get over this situation, for want of a better word, and we have the chance to look back at what we've done, I think we'll learn a lot of lessons. And it's exactly all about how we can piece everything together now to have a more robust and a more flexible platform going forward.
Yeah, so one of the things I was going to just mention off the back of your comment there, Andy, about how to pull the test together. I think one of the things which we've been working on, I think we released it a couple of years ago now, but it was a version of the Loft test generator that you guys use at ICAS already, but it's one that already factors in item exposure. So every time it generates a new test form, it ensures that it automatically minimizes item exposure across the bank while still fulfilling the kind of blueprint-based constraints and any psychometric targets that you have. So it's very sophisticated stuff, and I would definitely encourage you to look into it if that's something you are considering at the moment. Okay, so we have another question that's ready to go. So when do you, okay, I think this is for me, guys, sorry. When do you expect TBS to be released, and will this link to your Word and Excel simulation? Okay, so the TBS is available now. It has to be configured on or off on the different instances. It's not a question type that we'd expect everybody to use, so it is an optional thing. So if you are interested in the TBS, please just talk to your account manager at Surpass and we will sort that out. How will it link to Word and Excel? I think, as Andy said, they generally used for slightly different purposes. You can certainly have Word and Excel-based questions that sit alongside the TBS, do the combination of auto-marked and human-marked content, so that you have both question types within an exam, but there's no direct linking in terms of if you fill out the TBS, it will pre-populate an Excel spreadsheet or anything like that. So I wasn't sure if I've interpreted your question correctly. Please do follow up in the comments if not, and I'll try and clarify. Okay, so moving on, let's see if we've got, I'm being told we don't have much time left. 5 minutes, okay. So let's pick another question here. Can you load, I'm trying to pick one for you guys. There's a lot of questions about Surpass, I'm sorry. So there are some questions here about doing AI proctoring, so that you're monitoring via the AI, and that's something which we're going to be offering with Examity at the moment. Is that something you've explored, or you would consider or be interested in adopting, even now during the current circumstances, or in the future, even once the lockdowns and the pandemic is over?
Well, from Canada's point of view, so I think if you're trying to get a lot of people into an exam in a hurry, it's almost the only way you can do it these days. Because all the proctoring organizations the remote proctoring organizations are so busy that to use live proctors to get everybody into the examination efficiently is very, very difficult. Mm-hmm. So using the AI tools to get them in the exams is quite popular, and I think will become even more popular as we move forward.
Right. Okay. So, listen, I'm conscious that I don't want to ask any more questions where you guys don't get to answer. So there's a load of questions here which I'm going to take off, and I'm going to answer separately via email, or certainly myself or one of my colleagues will. So I think at this point we will just say thank you very much. It has been a really fascinating discussion and very interesting for me, both seeing the TBS and then hearing your thoughts and reactions to it. So I think, with that said, I will just say thank you very much to all my guests here today. Thank you to everybody who attended. Thank you to James and Ben and Tim, who worked behind the scenes to make all this look as slick as it can do. And we wish you a happy Christmas, and we'll see you at the next Surpass community event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a great Christmas.
The technology and services behind Surpass power the testing of many of the world's highest profile qualifications. Unique technology enables collaborative item authoring in banking, comprehensive test assembly, secure test delivery, and efficient grading and feedback of high-stakes paper, tablet, and computer-based testing, including automated one-click reporting solutions to assist you with item analysis. We can provide access to SME management services and trusted psychometricians, and our test delivery services team can help you get started with online proctoring or finding remote test centers. Or if you prefer, the advanced integration options and raw data extraction options in Surpass give you the freedom to choose your own external service providers. Trusted by international test publishers, certification, and awarding bodies, the Surpass platform is a globally hosted SaaS service with integration at its core. It is used to deliver millions of secure examinations every year in over 100 countries. In addition to a full range of standard question types, Surpass item authoring includes many innovative features which expand your testing capabilities, such as the spreadsheet question type, diagram creator tool, and the award-winning high-fidelity image viewer. When you use Surpass, you do so as part of a community of like-minded organizations. We constantly reinvest in the development of the Surpass platform with guidance and collaboration from Surpass community members. So, what else sets us apart from the competition? We provide multi-device delivery support from one platform. This is essential for making the most of the many testing scenarios and opportunities in this global market. We stand by our customers by providing excellent service and support, and above all, we are committed to continuously developing innovative features, helping the Surpass community lead the industry. We're confident that with Surpass powering your assessment, we can improve the examination experience for everyone. Get in touch with a member of the team today and discover how your assessment program could be powered by Surpass.